I've wanted to do this for quite a while, but now we have the opportunity to do it. You're normally busy, I'm normally busy, but I have wanted to do it. Now, the main thing for people who don't know about how you run and how you're doing with your running, what is, again, your 5K time, your 10K times, your half marathon times for, PBs? What have you got up to date now as your PB?
Okay, so my current PBs, my 5K PB is 16:31, which I'd like to hopefully improve this year. The 10K is 33:53, which was at Dewsbury just in February, and half marathon was 1 hour and 15 minutes and 29 seconds, which was in January at York.
Most people won't be running faster than that. There'll be a few, but most won't, really. And that's why I've asked you to do this, so thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm just hoping I can motivate a few people to do something similar.
Yeah, it'd be great. How long have you been running for consistently?
I only picked it back up seriously. I dropped it when I was about 2021. And my last race at that point, at 21 years old, I ran 40 minutes and a second dead at Dronfield, which was disappointing because it went on the gun time back then, not the chip time. And on my watch, it actually said that I broke 40. I ran 39:57. Years went by, played football for many years, and got to about 30, I'd say, something like that. And I'm close to 35 now in May. And I decided to take it back up. Initially, it was to just run the local 10K with yourself. And, I was hoping to try and put that right and break that 40 minutes. And on the day, it was a windy day, and I went out really hard and I paid for it big time. And I ran about 41:30, which was still a respectable time, but considering I'd trained for it and really wanted to beat 40, I was so disappointed. And my daughter unfortunately had your niece had had meningitis, unfortunately, as a baby. And after that, I decided I didn't want to give up on what I'd done. So I wanted to keep the training going and see how far I could take this and push myself. So I signed up for the Great North Run. And again, with your support, you said you'd come and do it with me. So we went up there and aimed for under 1 hour and a half, which I achieved. And again, I didn't want to lose the training that I'd put in. I'd put quite a lot of hours in, even ran on holiday in Italy before the Great North Run and things like that. And it seemed a shame just to think, I finished doing the half marathon now. I'm just going to go back to not doing a lot in particular. So I just kept the running going. And what I tried to do was enter an event, maybe a 5 or a 10K once a month or once every 2 months, just to give myself a focus going forward. And basically the rest history just snowballed from there, where as I hit one time, I was just hoping to try and then beat that time on the next 10K and keep training towards it until we've got to where we are today.
The beginning to yourself and talk to yourself somehow and give yourself advice on what you've learned over the past few years, what would you say?
I'd say that it's important to enjoy running. I think that's first and foremost. Go out and do it for yourself, do it at your speed. It's nice sometimes to have a little bit of company. If you're more of a slower runner and you just enjoy the social aspect, then do go out and run socially together. But quite often what you'll find, if you're trying to compete at any level, is that if you do run socially, you're never quite the same as that other runner. You'll either be slightly slower or slightly faster. Now, as long as you can train, you do your training to suit. And if you, for example, if you go out with a faster runner than you, and you think I'll make that my fast day or whatever, and I'll keep up with that particular person, that's fine. But if you're constantly trying to go out with that person, then it might end up where you could push yourself a little bit too far, and before you know it becomes too hard every time you go out, and it can easily put you off.
Why do you think we run? Well, why do you think people go out there, and what seems to others who are not runners, it must seem a bit mad, just going for prolonged jogging and coming back home. But why do you think, what's the benefits that you feel personally? Is that the main thing? Is it just that it makes it better in your own head, mental health, being proactive with that? Is that the main thing you take away from it, or do you take other things from it too?
I think things have changed since I first started running. When I first started running, it was about doing it for various reasons, like I mentioned, like charity or to actually give something back, and then try and get a personal achievement by breaking that 40-minute barrier and that sort of thing. Since then, with work and everything, it's been important to still get out and as I say, and relieve yourself of the stresses of the day. But in addition, the sort of the crux for me now is obviously not losing all that hard work and training I've put in really over the last sort of 3.5-4 years, and to ensure that I'm keeping at least on a level at where I'm at, but really I'm aspiring to do better at any given opportunity. I know the plateau has got to be just around the corner somewhere, but until I might not even know I've hit it. I might have hit it already, but I just want to certainly keep my mileage up and not lose any of the hard work that I've put in.
We kind of touched on it a second ago, but is there any pitfalls? Is there anything that you see maybe other people do, or ones that you were kind of falling into and you managed to get yourself out of it quickly? Is there any pitfalls in running that catch people out?
There can be quite a few. I think it's more on a competitive level. If you're a competitive person, that comes into play. If you're just going out for a social jog or a chat, a de-stress, then you can't really go wrong, because you're only doing that as and when you fancy going out. Where issues tend to arise it tends to be if you're trying to compete maybe with somebody in particular that you know well, and you're trying to achieve things that they've achieved, and you're trying to do that too quickly. You're looking way too far down the road, and you're not quite at that level yet, and you have to be really honest with yourself. For example, if you're part of a running club like I am, I was always trying to focus on maybe the people that were around me in a race roughly at my level, rather than aspiring to compete with the fastest runners in the club, and constantly maybe trying to possibly beat them. But I was more focused on my own time. You have to be very self-focused on what you're trying to achieve, rather than competing with anybody else, because it can lead to injury. It can lead to you going off way too fast in any given race or run that you do. And the other one is injuries. You have to make sure that you build up nice and slowly. There is a guideline that says that you should, from week to week, you should actually up your training by no more than 10%. So for example, if you do 10k in your first week that you've decided to take up running, you should only do 11k the following week. It's that steady. Obviously, once that becomes 20k, then the following week, in theory, you could do 22. Finally, the other one is once you've had an injury, is people coming back too soon. I see it so often where they've been a really decent level. They might have got themselves into good shape. They sadly get an injury, whatever that may be, and then when they do come back, mentally they believe that they're at the same level or very close to that level that they were at before, certainly after a few weeks off, and that causes them to push themselves too hard again, and the injury either reoccurs or it can cause another injury.
You learn to do certain things, like not race prep, but maybe training prep. I'm thinking things like to do with physically, stretching, strengthening, anything that side of the way, nutritional, that you might have implemented the odd time with running. Have you learned anything like that? Proactive stuff, that kind of thing.
Hydrate well the day before. Make sure that you're not overdoing it with the water, but you're still having water on regular intervals. Some people like to go out running with a bottle of water. I'd say that's not particularly a great idea. One, it tends to make your list slightly to one side as you run. which can actually cause various issues with your spine, your back, and muscle fatigue. So you'll find yourself constantly swapping hands with the bottle because you've, in effect, it doesn't sound a lot, but a litre of water roughly weighs a kilogram. So I think it's a litre anyway, or it's 500 mil, but it's one or the other. But it's considerable enough when you're actually moving your arms and rotating your arms to the extent that you would do on a run, and you do feel as if you're carrying something relatively substantial after a fair distance. Hydration's good on a run, but again, it's actually only required and will make a difference after an hour. Up to an hour, the hydration will generally have be coming from what you've already consumed prior to your run. So there isn't a great deal of benefit to that, and actually it means that you're lighter on your feet when you're out running.
So really, water, unless you've got some kind of pre-existing health condition, as long as your run's not going on for too long, you should maybe consider whether you should be taking it or not.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even before you actually go out, it's good to maybe have a third of a pint of water, but don't overdo it. If you have too much, you'll feel it literally sloshing around, and I'm not joking. If you drink like more than half a pint before you go out for a run, you will feel slower for it. It's okay the idea is to just stay hydrated throughout the day. So if it's first thing in the morning, maybe have like a small glass of water before you go out. But if you're running in an evening after work, just make sure that you're visiting the water cooler at work or whatever or the tap every hour or two, and just staying normally hydrated. That's the idea. As soon as you come back from your run, by all means, have a full pint of water or Robinson's or whatever it is to get that liquid back in. But again, like I say, too much of it and you just feel slow. I sound like I'm going to dehydrate people here. It's important that you obviously take things, what I'm saying, with in the context that I'm saying them in, and you don't end up really dehydrated. We're talking about, like Luke said, about runs that are of a short distance for yourself, or your own ability, maybe up to 30 minutes, or in my case an hour, where you're not going to be pushing yourself and know that you're going to come into the dehydration zone. Up your cadence, that's your actual step rate. So that's taking steps more frequently than overstriding. It's better for your alignment. You use less energy as you're running. And with cadence, the way to up it is actually the easiest way is to download an app on your phone. It's a metronome, which you actually use for music, believe it or not. And just put one earphone in so you can still hear traffic in the other ear, and then you'll hear literally like a ticking to the amount of steps that you're meant to do per minute. So it'll just be tick 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 constantly in your ear, and you're trying to land at the same rate as the app is actually generating this ticking noise. You'd think it'd be quite irritating at first, but actually your brain switches into it where it's actually trying to focus on landing at the same time, and it isn't actually irritating at all. And elite athletes such as Mo Farah or the top level athletes that we see in the world, they're all striving for a minimum of 185 steps per minute, and some of them actually reach over 200. Mine was very poor before I had IT band. It was down around, in a race, it was down at about 150, 155, which is really poor. So my energy efficiency wasn't very good. And I actually believe that was a big contributing factor to becoming faster, since I actually worked on my cadence. I now roughly run at around, in a race on a 10k, around 173, 174. It's still not as good as I'd like it to be, but it uses less energy and there's less force going through your knee and your joints from overstriding. Your center of gravity is a lot more aligned.
Got it. So cadence can, one, make you faster, two, it will most likely reduce injury, and that's because of you're not overstriding, and it changes your whole body position, the whole body.
You're nearly teaching yourself to run again. that's what you're doing. You're actually nearly teaching yourself, and it feels a little alien at first. But if you are serious about it and you do it, it doesn't take long. It takes a week, 2 weeks, and then you can go out and practice it without the app on for a couple of runs, and then put the app with the noise back on, a couple of days later, and try and up it and take it up that way.
But you're saying in a couple of weeks, if you got your cadence on point, you could change your running quite dramatically in a way.
Yeah, it ups your speed slightly because it makes you more energy efficient. So it doesn't actually make you faster. It just means that you're actually using less energy to do the same amount of running. And therefore, if everybody's got more energy during a given time frame or a given distance, then they're able to put that into maybe pushing yourself a little bit harder, and therefore your times will reduce, and that's how it benefits you. But as well as that, because it's benefiting your center of gravity, you've got less chance of getting these injuries that we just mentioned.
Brilliant. And you mentioned about the water bottle. Obviously, it's great to stay hydrated, but if your run's fairly short or there's no real true need to have a massive need for hydration and loads of water, why take the water bottle?
Whether it's worth taking this stuff and putting up with that because there's a significant benefit that way, or can you do without it? A phone's obviously a good idea to take out, and you can get running belts. I've actually got a belt called a flip belt, FLIP, flip belt. And the flip belt, it's like a sock, and you can just stuff phones into it or money. I run with £10 and a phone most of the time. £10 for emergency. I could always ask somebody and say I'll pay them fuel to get me to somewhere if I was really, really stuck, or to potentially purchase, emergency food or drink when I'm out. If there is a shop locally, it just get me by. And obviously the phone, as long as you've got a reception, it'll get you out of trouble just as it would anywhere else in the world.
You've had surgery, hernia surgery, and you've had pitfalls where there's been the odd injury, but you came back pretty quick. And normally this is what stops people from training. This is something that can ruin the whole routine, ruin consistency. They get out their social circles and habits and they're gone, aren't they, a lot of the time?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But you got back. Is there anything you did or you were consciously aware of that you were trying to keep yourself in the loop? Or
yeah, I've had a couple of operations the last few years. One was a hernia, one was a sinus operation the year before, and it's difficult. I mean, if it's ingrained in you where you're doing that on a daily basis or a bi-daily basis, and you've been doing that for a number of years, when you do have the operation, you wake up and within a few days, you're actually wishing you were back out already. And it's hard watching other people on things like Strava and seeing their times come up and things, because you feel, for me, it was this itchiness of feeling like I was losing fitness and losing my ability. That was the hardest thing to sort of take. The main thing is realizing that it takes 2 weeks to lose any form of muscle memory anyway. So you've got 2 weeks to start with before you even start to lose it. But if you've been exercising for quite a long time, or months and months, then it'll still be a considerable amount of time after that before you'd lose everything in its entirety. So the idea is, yes, you are going to have lost something after an operation or an injury or a layoff, but just try and build it back up, depending on how long you've been off for. Slow, depends on how slow you have to build it back up. But then realize if you're in tune with how fast you are after an injury or an operation, and you've realized, okay, so say I've lost 2 minutes per 10k roughly, then start focusing on that time again and trying to reduce it. Don't think, oh, I was 2 minutes faster than this before. It's all about positive mental thoughts. I can do this. Yes, I was there in the past. I'm not there now, but I'm going to break this at this time, and I'll slowly chip away at it down, and I'll get back to where I was before. And I'm going to eventually I'll beat that PB. And it's the same with the mentality in a race, where you get to the last for me, the last sort of 3K in a 10K race, and you feel everything in your body's saying, I just can't, I can't push myself. I can't, I need to just take my foot off the gas a bit. And there's got to be something that's within you that says, I can. And you know, it's so important. The mental side of it's more important than the actual physical side, I think, personally. But
tapering, one of the hardest subjects, I think. How do you do it? How do you lead to race prep before and then on the day kind of thing? How do you approach it?
half marathon, I tend to taper for that. I'll just do, I'm running right between 50 and 70K most weeks. And I tend to just do maybe 20, 25 in the early part of the week in the run up to a half marathon. Whereas a 10K, I'm not used to doing, for example, that distance each, you know, I do it 4 or 5 times a week just in training runs. And I now find that I don't actually need to taper. I usually run Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. I make the Thursday a slower one. And then usually if I wasn't racing, I'd do a Saturday run. And on the Saturday, I tend to just drop it to 5K and just do a plod around the block. And that's all I do personally for a 10K. But it all depends on what your body's used to and the training that's involved. 10K might be massive. It might be your first ever race and it might be massive for you. And if you know, if that is the case, then train hard up to say 7 days before. I'd do a couple of steady, very, very steady runs, maybe 4 to 7 days before the race. And then you could either stop entirely or just go out and do a couple of K the day before on the morning.
Got it. And on race day, do you have any tips for race day, how to approach it?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I struggle to keep food down when I'm racing, so it makes life a bit trickier for myself. Not through nerves or anything like that. It's just purely that I don't seem to be able to digest it in you know, within even an hour or two before the race. So I find that I can end up getting a little bit of like reflux in. So because of that, I've learned to adapt, and I tend to have a banana when I first wake up and a cup of coffee, a couple of hours before the race. And then I take, depending on how far a drive it is, if it's relatively local, I'll take another banana with me to the race, and I'll have another banana about 25, 30 minutes before the start of the race. And that's all I can manage. But bananas are like a superfood where running is concerned. They're very, very fast energy. As long as you chew them well, there's really no problem digesting them. I'd say even if you don't like bananas, then you need to start liking them, basically.
That's great. And if you are feeling nervous on the start line, Liam, you've been on so many start lines now. Is there anything you'd give as advice to those nerves, those pre-race jitters?
On the morning itself, I find you don't tend to get as many. I more struggle the evening before a race, going to sleep. I'm trying to think about it, or I might know what splits I need to do. So by splits, I mean what times per kilometre I've worked out in my head that I need to try and achieve to get the time I'm after. On the morning itself, I'm not too bad. Follow a routine. If you haven't got a routine, then try and not get up too early, because you've got too much time to pass, and then you might get more hungry and things like that. So it's trying to get up maybe like an hour before you need to set off wherever you're setting off to, absolute tops. Some people, it's a bit of a strange one, this, but before a race, there's quite a well-known fact that a lot of good runners don't shower. For some reason, you'd think everybody says that wakes you up, and for work it invigorates you. And I have a shower every morning before work. But for some reason, before a fast run, it seems to actually, I don't know what the science is behind it, but it can slow you down.
Got it. So in running circles, that's what they talk about. So in running circles, that's what they talk about.
Yeah, in running circles, don't shower before a race.
Okay, that's interesting.
Plus as well, it gives you plenty of space in the pen because nobody wants to stand near you.
I've got to add one last thing. You gave me advice on a 10K we did together, and you said mentally speaking, Luke, prepare yourself for between 4 and 7K or something like that. You said, prepare yourself.
Yeah.
That's when you're going to have your kind of battle. And then, you know, you've got to a standard where you can do the last 3.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where the battle's won and lost. And I found that really interesting because I got a PB as when you told me to do that.
It was a good one as well, wasn't it?
So that was great advice, and I guess you can apply that to other races. That you've got to conserve your effort for those peak times of effort when you really need it.
Any race, the hardest bit is always going to be the midsection, roughly from 40 to 70, 40 to 75%. That is the hardest time in any race, and it's because at the start the adrenaline's going, and you're just sort of getting the ball rolling and getting into emotion. You know, your energy levels are good. Once you get in and you're starting to feel tired and things are not going, the energy levels are dropping, then that's when it becomes hard, and you still can be a considerable distance away from the finish. Within the last couple of K of any race, whatever distance that is, it's so easy to motivate yourself again. You can smell the finish line, it's coming up, and it's all you need to sort of get you actually over the line. So it's the approach up to sort of 75% of the race that's the tough bit, the really tough bit. And if you can dig deep in that midsection, that 100% is where, as long as you've gone off at a steady pace, that's where mentally your race will be won or lost in terms of you achieving a time that you want to achieve.
Brilliant. Liam, thank you so much for your time. You've given time to us on your day off, and that's great. And hopefully someone can take, I've actually took quite a few points already. I wrote a few points down, but hopefully someone else can take some points and they can get into running and enjoy it, because it does so much for people, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, definitely. As long as I'm not inspired like somebody that's going to be faster than me, because that means I'm another one down the pecking order in a race. But no, I hope it's helped somebody out there, and the experiences, good and bad, that I've had over the last few years have helped somebody not make the same mistakes, or it's enhanced the running ability. So, good luck, everybody.
Brilliant. Thanks, Liam. Thank you.
All right.